Kelvin Hughes, well, Henry Hughes really is specialised in making compasses and sextants.
Compasses, sextants, all navigational instruments. So you had aviation compasses, marine compasses, you had sextants, marine sextants. They manufactured then the aircraft sextant. Then we were making, from the magnetic compass, which was still mandatory, all ships had to carry a magnetic compass as such, and a sextant, because all these GPS systems, if the electrics go, like in a supermarket, if the cash machine doesn't operate, nobody can sell you anything. And if this happens in a very busy channel, you've got to navigate by the old-fashioned means, find out where you are, and keep an observation on what's around you.
My grandfather worked at Kelvin Hughes from 1919 till 1951, and when I left school, when I was 16, he managed to get me an apprenticeship at Kelvin Hughes, or Henry Hughes as it was known then. I remained in Kelvin Hughes for 47 years, doing various jobs. One of my main activities was packaging design for the instruments that Kelvin Hughes made. One has to understand that the instruments that KH made were very delicate and quite expensive, being radar sets, and at one time echo sounders and that sort of thing. And so one had to design cushioning, etc., and wooden boxes and cardboard boxes to make sure that when the instruments arrived at the customer, they worked well. If they didn't arrive well, there was a lot of cost involved, because either you had to send an engineer from Hainault to wherever that customer's ship was in order to repair them, and if the ship got held up, it was so many £1,000s per day until it was put right.
This is the portals to the deep shelter, so called because it is about 40 or 50 feet below ground, originally made for protecting fine instrument making work during the early days of the war. And it was subsequently utilised as a test facility for a photographic display equipment which was designed here as part of the early warning radar chain, most of which are located fairly deep underground.
And was this fairly secretive work?
But a lot of the equipment that we've made here over the years, mostly on Ministry of Defence contracts, has a level of restriction, as I say, and you need quite frequently to go and visit ministry establishments and sometimes go on board ships. But you never really know, until you're denied access, just how security cleared you are. Somebody does.
One of the things I got involved with was once again, a highly secret device, which was called the 35mm projector. Now this is a device which takes a picture of a cathode ray tube, radar set, takes a picture onto film, develops, fixes, washes and dries in about 10 seconds, and then click, projects it onto a screen 12 foot square. So a dozen, 50 people sit and watch this screen, and this was the result of the long-range radar sets which we had around the country, called rotor sites. None of them exist as far as I know today, but there were dozens of them throughout the country, and they were characterised by these huge antennas rotating. The set was developed within the company. They were asked to do this because they got this background of recording things on echo sounders and what have you. And it was used in America by the DEW system, Distant Early Warning System, which you've probably heard of. Had all these stations up in Alaska which were looking at over the pole to Russia to detect their aircraft. And through the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, who were the people, we supplied these devices to them, and it was fitted into their system.
So was it quite a traditional firm in that
Oh,
respect
very,
when you
very.
joined it?
Well, yes, because it still had many of the old instrument makers there, from Forest Gate, from Fenchurch Street, from home builders, you know, people that used to do them. And so there was a blending of the old and the new beginning. Very interesting period of time. Lots of wonderful instrument makers, craftsmen, very, very jealous of their little, used to keep all their little know-hows and knowledge within themselves. And you had to get to be friends of these people to acquire knowledge, you know. I think there was a bit of discrimination, sexual discrimination. I wanted to get a girl in. She was quite good. And most of the women would do as they're told, and that's not meant funnily. They would work to whatever was laid down, but they used their imagination also. They were quick learners. You know, I had one girl who was very good, and I had an electrical test section, and I said, oh, I'm going to put Miss so-and-so. Oh, no, I can't have a woman in here. She won't know what she's doing. I had a lot of opposition from the chap running the section. I said, well, look, just try her. In the end, he wouldn't. I wanted to take her away at one time. No way. She was very good at fault finding. Life
Doing an apprenticeship was really, although I didn't realise at the time, a marvellous thing, because you learned not every aspect, but most of the aspects of what was made at KH and how it was done. And of course, in those days, where now everything is electronic, in those days everything was mechanical. So where you would have gearboxes and that sort of thing, and the gears and the whatever, now that's all done to a large extent anyway, electronically. So you would go around. I started off, as it tells you in those sheets, filling little oil bottles, little green oil bottles with oil that went out with the sextants that we made at the time. And I know sextants are a thing of the past, but in 1952 they very much weren't a thing of the past, and obviously ships needed them to navigate all over the world. And that was the medical department, this one here. This was the medical department, where Sister Plummer, if you want to sort of, I'll stand here if you want, where Sister Plummer used to work, and she had an assistant nurse as well. And anybody that got hurt themselves during their working time here would always go to the medical room and be treated. If necessary, then taken to the hospital. But it was a fully blown department, and she was employed and her assistant full time. So as you can imagine, but then that time there were a lot more people working, you know, between 1,000 and 1,800.
And what sort of hazards were there in working?
Well, obviously, if you're using machinery, there were things like guillotines, where one could chop a finger off quite easily. In the carpenter shop, there were many saws, where obviously you could do yourself quite damage.
What about the social life of the factory?
Now the social life. No, very, very good. they were very family orientated to the local people. It was a family firm. Most of the families locally worked at the factory as they did pre-war. Back to the social side, they had a good sports and social club pre-war, which did most things: cycling, horticulture, dancing, dramatic society, Christmas time, children's parties. The first party I got involved in, we had all the kids, and there was a limit on the age from, I think, about 6 up to about 14. Of course, you got kids in there which were about 3, and we put them all together on individual tables, and you couldn't, the people, the helpers couldn't get round the tables, and of course you had a mixture of groups on tables chucking things about. Oh, it was mayhem.
How did you meet your wife?
Because she worked at the firm.
What was she doing at the firm?
She was working in the costing office. There was 4 of us there, and we were in the centre block building, the end of it, and we looked out almost 180 degrees, up the yard, down the yard, and we used to watch all these young maidens tottering by. And of course one young lady caught my eye, and in the end I plucked up courage and did she want to go to the opera or whatever, and I was rather keen on that. I married my wife, who worked in the costing office, and she carried on working in the costing. This was quite typical. This was because there was a lot of, I say, about 30% women in the factory, and there was a lot of this going on, as it were.
And this is where the apprenticeship scheme was excellent, because people were allocated to various craftsmen, and you had to toe the line. You know, and of course you get jokes played on you. You'd have a mug of tea and you'd go to drink it, and somebody bored a hole in the side of it using, or screwed it to the bench, you know, and you get sent to the source of some striped paint, and a wonderful era of learning for the youngsters. And you picked up with the craftsmen, and if you didn't toe the line, you were sort of booted a bit, you know.
And what do you see the future for Kelvin Hughes being?
I think that everything's there for us now. I think, you know, we've got products, we've got people. We need a recovery market, but I think that's there. And I think moving to Enfield is going to put us in a modern environment. It will help the way that we work, and I think it will help the way people think, because they'll be working in a modern environment where, quite honestly, the roofs don't leak. It's, you know, it's not cold in the winter, hot in the summer, and, you know, we can work together as teams rather than at the moment disparate units all over the place.